this is going to be recorded. So, just if you're not comfortable with showing your face as to the guest, then you can just hide your, turn your video off. But this will be posted so that you guys can watch this back. And for people who didn't make it, you'll be able to see it. So, Brayton, we'll start with you again. Can you just tell us about where you're from and how you got into the industry?
Sure. My name is Brayton Lydell. I'm originally from Jamestown, New York, and then I came to Buffalo to go to college at Buffalo State College. And I got into the industry because the semester before I graduated, I was given the opportunity to work in the production office on A Quiet Place 2 when John Krasinski came and shot here in Buffalo.
Awesome. Liam, you want to tell us where you're from and how you got into the industry?
So I'm from Oswego, New York. I first started really getting into it in high school in the television program in my high school, and then I went into I got to college. I got into the TFA program and I pursued it from there. My first internship was at Killer Films in New York City. Then I worked on a production set in New York City, and then now I'm currently working at house out in LA. We mainly focus on dramas, but yeah.
That's super dope, super awesome. Luqman, tell us where you're from and how you got into the industry.
Yeah, so I'm from Buffalo. In high school, I started off taking film classes, and then I always liked to do my own thing on the side. And then I kept them posting on Instagram, and eventually people just saw it, and then they just hit me up to help them on their projects. And then eventually it led to me getting onto film sets and stuff and working on music videos. So that's it.
Awesome, thank you. Markis?
Yeah, my name is Markis Lazar. I really started just editing in high school. And after that, I went to Buff State for television and film. After I went to Alfred State for digital media. And then last October, I joined this company called Art Design and Marketing. And now I do a lot of composite After Effects work, Premiere work. So it's it's not really film based or narrative based, but it's more like technical for the corporate side of things. So I guess that's what I do mostly.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so Brayton, we'll just kind of keep the loop going. As far as editing and with what you guys all do, what are some of the first things that you do when you start a job?
Well, for me, after I've received the footage that I'll be working with from the client, if it isn't already labeled, like the actual files are labeled by scene and take, I go ahead and do that myself because I want to stay organized before I even import it into my editing program. And then once I have it all organized like that, I bring it in, I kind of place it into different bins depending on if it's music, or sometimes I'll take the takes and I'll separate them by the type of shot they were. And then I also am a fan of color coding just because, that's a visual representation of how everything is organized really helps me. And then later when you finish your timeline and you finish the project, it's all colorful. So that's what I do before I start anything else.
Kim?
So yeah, I mean, what Brayton said, just a lot of the organizing of things, labeling, all the footage. One of the main things that I do is once I have everything in, I mainly use Premiere. Once I have everything uploaded, I will usually, I'll just watch through everything, whether it's good takes, bad takes, just get an idea of all the footage that I have to work with, just mark it down and take my notes, and then I get into the whole editing process. And coloring for sure, love to color. It's a great part of it, but yeah, so.
Markis and Luke, you guys want to add anything? Because if it's very similar, you don't all have to say the same thing, but I would like to hear, what you guys do if it's something, completely different than what everybody else said.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely add on to I just transcode and log the clips. As Brayton and Liam said, coloring is definitely one of the first things, and also just looking through the footage, making sure that if the director or client that you're working with references something, immediately what it is. So just kind of running through everything and making sure you're familiar with your clips, really. That's the most important thing, at least for me.
Yeah, another thing I'd say is that if it's something that you shot yourself, you sometimes it could be a bad habit that I run into, but sometimes I don't watch through all of my footage because I sort of already know what I already shot. But if I'm working with someone else, like they said, I just watch through all the footage, make sure I know everything's there. And then one major thing I do is I make sure that I talk with the director or the client and see exactly what they want, the vibe they're going for with the edit, just so I can have a sort of direction when I'm going through.
Got it. Thank you. So what does a typical day look like for somebody who works in post-production and editing, whether that's on a film set, or I know some people like Markis, you said more like corporate side. And so I'll have you start with us, Markis. What does a typical day look like for you?
You wake up, eat, you wash your face, you shower, you brush your teeth.
You gotta take care of yourself. You got to.
You got to. But no, after you get ready and you feel relatively comfortable, I usually open my email and I see if Adam or Howard. Adam's my employer, Howard's my employer's business partner. I usually see if they've contacted me about anything, and it could be video editing in Premiere, it could be composite editing or photo editing or web mock-up design. We do a lot of that in Sketch or in Wix. I don't know if you're familiar. We also light and render in like 3D programs, like in Keyshot. But I mean, really, I'll just check all my media. So Fiverr and Upwork, I have those, and I get clients on those sometimes. So I kind of just like scramble. I like jumble like through separate things. So that'll be the first thing that I do. And if I have anything, that's probably what I'm going to be working on for the entirety of the day, or at least till like 6 o'clock or something. So.
Got it. Luke?
Yeah, so typically I'd look through my Instagram because that's where I get most of my work from. I'd have people DM me and then eventually email me with projects. Then they'll send me the footage. I'll look through it, go through my editing workflow, make sure that everything is set. And then I just continue on with the project, send them a draft. They'll look over it, and then we just bounce back and forth until we get something we like.
Got it. Liam?
So I'll like go through like my current job, just to be a little different. Basically all I do is I'm technically considered a PA right now, so I am helping the two owners of my company. Seismic Productions, they have about 30 employees in total, like probably 8 or so are editors, a few AEs. I'll usually go in and I'll see what the AEs and editors are working on. And then usually what we get is we'll get like the full, like we'll get movies in, and we actually had A Quiet Place Part 2, so I've had to watch that a few times because we've been editing trailers for that. But so like I'll like get in and I'll watch a movie, and I'll basically just like, what my main job to do is to transcribe it and take notes on it for the producers. And then I give my notes to the producers and the owners. They take their notes as they watch the movie, and then they basically tell the editors what they want. And, you just go from there. And I'm also in charge of like keeping in touch with the clients and making sure they're all like good. Like we have a lot of big clients, like a lot of the major studios out here. But yeah, so it's a lot of organizing around the office, and sometimes I get to watch a new movie, which is sometimes good, sometimes bad. Some of them are pretty rough.
Like you get to watch, all these new movies that are coming in being edited.
It is cool. And you get to see the whole process. So like we get like, the first cut, and then a few months later we'll get the second cut. And like, we had Coming to America, like the second one, and that like the first cut we got was 4.5 hours. So I had to watch this 4.5 hour movie of just like, and it was just like every possible joke. And like, they just need to know who would laugh at what joke. And then like, they trimmed it down from there. But that's a rough movie. They're having a lot of issues with that right now. I think audiences aren't happy with the main character, like the new lead. And I mean, what are you gonna do? Like,
yeah,
already. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. It just it can be tedious at times. So there's a lot of typing and stuff.
That's really cool though. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like I get to see how everything is happening in the office and all the editors and stuff. I mean, a lot of people work from home now, but
yeah. Thank you, Brayton.
So I am an editor with Lightwork Media Buffalo. Maybe you've heard of them. And then I also do my own freelance stuff on the side. But I personally can really only like sit in this chair for 2 hours at a time in chunks. So I make sure that I kind of space out my day between all of the different things I'm working on, which is kind of the responsibility of being freelance, but also kind of the freedom of being able to kind of set your own hours at your own pace. But with that, I have to then make sure that every time I stop editing for the day, I factor in the progress I made that day into what I still need to do before the deadline. It's really all kind of my own responsibility if I want to get hired again. But I mean, I'm sure everybody would agree the day to day, depending on how many different things you're working on at a time, some days you might be doing interviews, some days you might be doing graphics work, and some days you might be mixing music. You know, it can really vary, but that's, I think, why all of us do this and do kind of all different parts of it.
Yeah, I think we didn't really discuss this, but I think it would be good if, for the people who will watch this, can you guys all kind of just talk about exactly what post is and what all of that encompasses? Because maybe a lot of people don't know all the different things that it means. So, and whoever wants to take this or add on, but just kind of explain like what essentially does post-production mean for everything.
I'll go. So when you're just doing your own stuff, you're probably editing and doing the titles and doing the coloring and doing the sound and doing the music. That's probably like at the individual level. So it benefits you to kind of know a little bit about each department, but Liam and Markis, you probably could speak more to, as you get higher up into more like professional editing houses and being part of production companies, your niche becomes smaller because there are specialists for coloring, there are specialists for audio and music and editing, just editing. So
Right.
so
Yeah, like we have.
Yeah.
Or go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Liam.
Me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, we have like our own graphics department that does all the, movie trailer title cards and all that stuff, and we do have our own music department. Surprisingly, we send like the final trailer cuts back to the studios, and they do like the official like cut of it. So they have all the time codes in it because it's all time stamps, and they remove all that and go in and color it and make sure everything's good. So we don't do any of the coloring side of things, but we do, all the rest. But it is like very slow. Like it's not like everyone. It's not like the editors are doing, a mix of everything. Like everyone has their, like there's a specialist for every department, as Brayton said. So.
Yeah, like with art design and marketing, I can just say like personally, like it's a little weird because like my employer has had this company for 7 years, and he hired me as his like first employee last October. And really it's like a multimedia company. So we do, any job that we get, whether it's like 3D product rendering, or we have to edit a video, or we have to like, apply motion graphics or whatever, it's like kind of learning how to do everything at an advanced level, which is definitely like, it takes a task. And, there was like a whole orientation process with like learning new programs, but definitely like once you get into up in those higher echelons of like film, especially in LA, like you really don't have like much room to like do everything, or let alone be an expert at everything. So yeah, Brayton like said it right.
Thank you, Brayton. I just felt like, maybe some people might not really know what it all encompasses, and it's easy so that we can break it down so that they understand what post-production is, because people might want to do motion graphics or titles or, like there's so many different things that they can do. It's not just a blanket of editing. So, all right. So what do you guys prefer? Like, what is your preferred editing system that you use? And we'll start with Luke. You can go first.
Okay. Yeah, I love the Adobe suite. When I started off editing, I started with Sony Vegas. It was like a cracked version of it. But eventually I realized that Adobe Premiere is pretty much what everyone uses. It's like an industry standard. There's also Final Cut and Avid, but like Premiere, you'll find it a lot on sort of like lower level projects all the way up to higher end projects. It's like very versatile.
And is it just because it's the industry standard that you like it, or is there something that you really like about it?
To be honest, at first I didn't really like it because going from Sony Vegas to Adobe Premiere was very like intimidating, and it was really hard to learn like the workflow. But eventually, once I got it, it's really easy to switch in between all of the Adobe products. Let's say you want to do visual effects, it's easy to make a composition straight from your Premiere timeline and just hop back and forth between Premiere and After Effects, and makes your workflow a lot faster and a lot smoother.
Got it. Thank you. Markis?
Yeah, so I actually recently just upgraded my workstation like 2 weeks ago. So I have a computer now that has such high processing power, which gives me the ability to, I downloaded this one, I'm learning like this new program right now called Houdini. And Houdini is really good because you can only use it really with high-end GPU processing, but it's essentially a procedural node-based software that's created by this company called Side Effects, and it's made for like generating smoke, fire, water, earth, all the elements in Avatar, and literally like it's so cool because like you can make stuff in Houdini, you can generate particles, like all those elements in Houdini, and then you can bring it over and composite it in After Effects or Nuke. Nuke is the industry standard, and I'm still in the orientation of learning that. I feel like I'm learning like a new program every month with this job, but it's cool because it's like node based, so that means it's like not destructive. So you can edit certain nodes individually, and it will give you a new view of your element, whether it be fire, smoke, whatever. It'll edit that in real time instead of like going through After Effects, and you have to go through a million different compositions and like. But After Effects is definitely, like, I would say if anyone's interested in getting into VFX or any of that like high end compositing, like it's really accessible for like anybody who's casual to just download the Adobe Suite 7-day trial, like Luqman said, and just like learn it. It's because it's not as hard as it really is made out to be. And Premiere definitely isn't as hard. So I would say Premiere, just for like straight up just wanting to edit video that you filmed, is perfect for that. So those are my favorites: Premiere, Houdini, and After Effects. So
Anyone sounds pretty cool, I have to say.
it is. I haven't even like scratched the surface of it. Like I haven't even learned like 1% of it probably. Like I'm just like I feel like with VFX you'll never really know everything. There's just so much.
Yeah. Liam?
So I started using the Adobe collection a long time ago. I started with CS3 way back in the day and got into After Effects and Premiere and all that good stuff, Photoshop at the time. I definitely stick with just the Adobe collection for the most part. However, I have like noticed like while Premiere and whatnot, like they are becoming the industry standard. A lot of like the major post-production outlets out in LA want you to know, like along with Premiere, they want you to know Avid. And on top of that, like something that some schools offer, I don't think Buffalo offered it when I was there, but you can get like certified in Avid, and like it goes in like intermediate, like expert, like there's like 3 or 4 different ranks. And each one comes like it's like a day class, and then you like have to like I don't know how exactly you like what the final test is, but you basically like if you're certified in Avid, like a lot of people, like it's very much wanted out here. But like Avid is a tough, like I'm so used to Premiere that like while I know Avid, like I do like to stick with Premiere, mainly because like a lot of the big things for me are like for my freelance jobs, I do basically everything, coloring, sound mixing for the most part, and just the After Effects side of things. So like having the ability to bring all of that stuff easily into just add it to an Adobe composition or an After Effects composition or an Audition composition, like it's like so much easier for me to like just like the workflow of everything. Like I can get my stuff done a lot faster with the Adobe collection. And I use an iMac. I got that probably a year or 2 ago. It has like probably mid-range computing power. It's like definitely love it though. I'm not a huge fan of Microsoft, but that's just me. But yeah.
Great.
I definitely know my way around Premiere better than I know my way around Avid, but like Liam said, there are advantages at the professional level of being able to navigate through both. So I'm lucky enough right now that I'm working on enough different projects that I do, some of them in Premiere and then some of them in Avid, where maybe I can practice and maybe not know all the buttons and I don't have to work as quickly, because I do ultimately want to know Avid and enough of the Adobe Creative Suite to justify having to pay for access to all of these different programs, even though I only use like 2. I kind of want to learn all of the tools that I have at my disposal because they might come in handy.
Speaking, you mentioned like just the keyboard shortcuts and whatnot. Another thing out here, like I have heard plenty of times, like when I was like originally getting a job, like or looking for a job, some of the people that I was meeting with, would mention to me like you do realize like once you get to the professional level of editing, like if you don't know your shortcuts on the keyboard, like they're either gonna fire you or they're gonna test you beforehand. So like knowing shortcuts, like Premiere, I actually bought like because I use like all Mac stuff. I bought like a little keyboard pad that has like all the shortcuts on it. So like I got that years ago, and like I don't even use it anymore because I know all the shortcuts for Premiere, and that carries over for most of the rest of the Adobe collection. But Avid is still like I'm like kind of lost on that front. But like it is like there are small things about like trying to like get like heavily into the like post-production side of things in the industry that like you do have to like you want to be aware of, and one of them is shortcuts and like this certification for Avid. But
especially when it comes to revisions, just think of the amount of revisions that post-production editors do. Having to go back into a composition and move things around in a way that's like going to be convenient is like going to be super. Like it's just always going to be super like a priority. So
so genius and hard and complicated. I commend everybody who does posts, whatever it is. I'm like, man, it just is so complicated, and like so kudos to all of you guys. When you guys are working on your projects, and Markis, I'll start with you this time. Whether that's doing visual stuff, sound, who are you collaborating with most on a job?
I collaborate most likely with art design and marketing, which is my employer, obviously. So I would definitely but they've opened me up to a lot of recurring clients that I've used, that I've worked with for many times, like Legrand in Syracuse. They're like a power, light, and data company. And QMotion, they make like shades, these motorized shades that you can just like click with a remote. And so we do a lot of advertising for them. And even Levine Center right here in Rochester is, they do like a lot of social justice events and stuff like that. I do a lot of I edit for their events, like their opening videos and stuff. So it's a lot of work from various clients. Those are probably the ones that I work with the most. But it's anyone is eligible. Like we get a whole bunch of clients that we only work with once, and we won't ever see them again until like maybe, I don't know, a year later or something. So
but is there like a point person, like say you're working on a job and you're editing it, is there like a point person, or who are you, I guess, talking to the most while you're working on a specific project?
Oh, well, at first I would say Adam, my employer, was definitely always like kind of like checking back with me and everything. As of like, I don't know, maybe the last 3 months, he's kind of given me the creative freedom to just kind of like go about and like, he trusts me with like taking jobs and, putting my own creative spin on it, which has like been something that I've fought for a very long time. But like now I'm able to kind of like bring my own creative juices into the project. So yeah, I mean, but Adam and Howard, his business partner, are probably my two most closely associated people who look over my shoulder sometimes. So
Luqman, you want to share when you're editing, work? And I know you said that a lot of your work comes from Instagram, where like people will ask you to edit stuff from them. Who are you, collaborating with most while you're working on a project?
I'd say if it's a smaller project or a personal project, I'd be communicating directly with the client the most, since there's not really a middleman in between. However, if it's like a bigger project where I'm in a more specialized role, like a music video, I talk straight to the director, and then we'll just go back and forth instead.
Got it. Thank you. Liam?
So I mean, I have Fiverr. I haven't really like kept up with that. But I usually like, for the most part, I just get my jobs through like knowing people, and like people that know that I do post-production, they reach out to me about it. But I had an internship my sophomore year, and I met this kid who I'm currently living with. He hired me multiple times throughout the years to edit all of his college projects, and they're all like big. I mean, not like huge budget, but like they're pretty. He went to LSU, and they're like, I think they were in the Newhouse program there. Like it was like they were like just intimidating projects. But I met some people through him at Syracuse. Like he has just like reached out to people that he knows, let them know. Like it's just really like, it's just, for me, it's just been knowing people. That's how like I get in touch. And then as far as like who I like talk to the most like during the project, usually the director I'll stay in constant contact with, unless he's like really bugging me. I'll try to just wait it out and tell him to just hold hold the role until I finish it. But usually it's the director.
So is there, for the job that you're doing now, or the production place that you work,
Yeah.
Is it different the way that they operate? Because since they're working on like those big major movies, do you see it different of who
Yes.
they're
How for trailers works, the assistant editors are there for the editors and to assist them with whatever they need and to finish like the cuts, and usually just to export and stuff like that. The editors all have, so there's like probably like 5 producers, and they each have like their own team. And so each producing team will reach out to whatever editor they want to reach out to and have them like, to work on whatever project it might be. And the editor will just go through the producer, and then the producer, there is the client. So then the producer is talking to the client about like their thoughts on it. And then it's like, so like for the most part, like it's editor, producer, then client, and like depending on the client, because sometimes we do get like clients that's like, like Markis said, like you don't really get them very often. Like they might, it might be the only time you even talk to them. Whereas like we have like Disney Plus now, and like Disney Plus will like actually like, they stay in constant, contact with us. And like, obviously depending on who the client is, will jurisdict how like much stress is being put on the producer and the editor, But.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brayton?
Yeah, I'll just add that like on narrative things, the editor is usually working most closely with the director, but then when it's kind of client work, that director is filled by the client, the person paying you usually. But I want to add that kind of the dynamic and the way that you work with your client or your director has changed significantly because of COVID. I don't know if you heard about this. We're in a pandemic, and it kind of means that we can't ideally, be in the same room as the person and be able to watch it along with them in real time and make cuts in real time. What we've had to kind of do instead is now we're sending full cuts back and forth and getting lists of notes, and then we apply all the notes and then we send it back. This is how we have to kind of make it work nowadays. Whereas I think, in an ideal situation, you have your client or your director in the same room with you, kind of over your shoulder, just so that you can try things and experiment a little more without having it have to be like a whole notes and back and forth ordeal.
When I like would work with the dude in Syracuse, it was usually per scene. Like he did come to Buffalo there, but it was usually like I'd send him each scene like as it was being finished, and then sometimes he would ask for like certain, like if he didn't want to wait for the whole scene, he'd ask for specific sections of it and whatnot.
Right.
But yeah. So
does everyone prefer notes, or do you prefer like over shoulder editing?
I prefer notes. In my opinion. I usually get very frustrated when I have the dude looking over my shoulder. Yeah, for the actual, like for my company though, they have a program, I forgot what it's called, but they like the clients will just like watch the screen capture of it, like like it'll all be live time, and the client will be on the phone, and the editor and the producers will both, the editor will be at his computer, obviously the producer and the client will both be watching from their own computers, just watching their monitor and what's happening, what the editor is doing. So like that's kind of how, like, we've never really had clients come in to watch over, like look at stuff. It's really just the producer's job to do that. But when the client needs to, it's all through just online stuff.
To answer Luqman's question though, at least in my regard, like when I first started with art design and marketing, there was a client who wanted to literally like had me like edit while they were looking over my shoulder, and it was like the most obnoxious thing. It was just so like, it was like, but I mean, did they get the job done faster? Yes, but I mean, after like them telling me to adjust opacity, like duration,
Oh my goodness.
and like various minor cuts here and there, and then like telling me to redo it and undo it and then redo it, and it's just like, yeah, if you can get free of that as soon as possible,
Yes.
like
Yeah, that's
try to.
one thing because like if they're over your shoulder, you can get micromanaged. But however, the same thing can happen with notes because like they can't really see what's going on, and like they'll send you some notes, they end up not liking it, then you have to go back and do it again and again and again, and
I know.
it just depends.
That's like,
For sure.
It sounds stressful. I feel like the person like being over my shoulder, I think it also could depend on the relationship. Like maybe if you have a director that you work with often, then that, relationship is probably developed. So it's like, yes, let's be in the room together. But maybe if it's a random client, it might be a little annoying to just have that person in your ear while you're trying to edit it. So I guess it could be kind of like a personal thing, but I feel like I will be a little like, unless we have this established relationship, I do not think I would want you just in my ear while I'm trying to edit this.
totally. Like if it's your friend at like, I don't know, 1 a.m. and y'all are just like, kind of like, oh,
Yeah,
that would be cool.
sure,
Like
for sure.
that's awesome. Like,
My friends from Syracuse, like we're good friends, but because of that, it made it worse to have him look over my shoulder because it was like he was more comfortable saying stuff. I'm like, dude, like I know how to edit, like just let me do my thing.
Yeah.
but we all kind of get that way. Like, I mean, if you're a buyer on a freelancing website like Fiverr or Upwork, like I know I've done this a couple times where like I want work from somebody and then I'll constantly like 2 days afterward, the date is still set like 5 days before, but I asked like 2 days in, like, hey, what's the status, what's the whatever. So I guess it's just having that empathy on both sides, like just like that's the perfect relationship. So
I feel like this is a golden question because, this is what we all want to do. How do you guys go about getting jobs as freelance editors or, the companies you're in? How does somebody who want to do this, how do they go about, finding a job? And Brayton, you can start first.
Sure. It's a lot of word of mouth, whether that means you go like through a more direct line like Fiverr or like a client and editor direct contact in like a system that puts that together. Otherwise, sometimes you get people who just see your work and that has your name at the end of it, and they're like, I better reach out to that person because they're doing something similar to what I want to do. I guess I would recommend, especially for people that are like just starting out and want just kind of things to practice on, just make it known to as many editors as you know that you are ready to do something, do any kind of work to get started. And if that's an editor who is maybe getting more clients than they can say yes to, maybe some of those get kind of passed on to you. If you make yourself a good recommendation that they feel that they can trust, this client can be passed off to you instead of them.
Liam, how about you? And could you also talk about how you got your current job that you're at as well?
I kind of answered this question a little bit the last time. I messed up with my order here. But yeah, so I for freelance, I use Fiverr for the most part, and then it's like Brayton said, like word of mouth for the people either see my name in something I've worked in and they reach out to me, or it's like a friend of a friend, and they put in a good word for me. For my current job, I moved out here about a year ago now. It was last October. And it took me about 3.5 months to finally get a job, but a lot of it was just like hammering the people I know, whether it's like professors back at Buffalo State, like friends that I knew that moved out here, or are at least like in the industry, past bosses, like just anything possible to see if I can get a connection with someone they might know in the post-production industry. And it ended up working out. My roommate, an internship he had probably like 2 years ago when he did a semester out here. His boss, she like was willing to meet with me, so I met her for coffee, and she like really hit off. She wanted to make sure that she wasn't just going to recommend a person she didn't know to some random people. So after that, I started getting emails from like production companies, just to me, like post-production companies, like not like actual like job reasons, just to, like so they can meet me themselves and have me in mind for when the time comes. So I met with Seismic a few times, and they really liked me, and they were on the verge of firing the dude in my current spot, which was kind of scary going into it. Because I'm like, I don't know, like, what am I going to do to mess this up? But so after like probably a month or so of just in constant contact with them and following up and seeing, if they have anything open yet, they finally reached out to me and asked if I wanted to start. So it took a while. It was probably like 3 to 4 months, but it's really just being persistent and like trying to like constantly like staying in touch with people. And like, even now that I have a job, it's still one of the things I make sure I do is like the people that help me out, like whether it actually got me a job or not, I'll still email them just to reach out and see how they're doing, just so I can always have these contacts and hopefully bounce to another job when the time comes. But,
and even though it's entry level on that, what would you say for someone who's trying to work at a post place like that? What are they looking for? Do they expect, you know, the new hires, the entry level people to fully know how to edit? You know, what are they looking for?
When I was meeting my boss's name is David. He asked me like, you know, off the bat, like, what do you want to do? And he gave me the options like the music side of things, writing, or editing, post-production. And I said editing. And so like he did kind of give me like an option. And like, because that, like, since I'm in an entry-level position, it was like, once they are happy with me and they're ready for me to move on to like the next position, like they have me, like I'm up front. So like I'm kind of doing everything. So like I know what's happening with the music stuff. I know what's happening on the production and writing side of things. I know what's happening on the post-production side of things. And so they kind of like, they'll basically, they currently right now are just building me up to like eventually move me on to post-production. But they, you know, they did give me like the option, like, what would you prefer to do? Like, what would you like to do? I've had to do a lot of writing for them, and which has made me nervous because they like what I'm writing and I don't want them to try to push me in that direction. So like, but it is like, it's kind of, since it's entry level, like I do deal with a lot of stupid stuff with my, you know, my bosses, like just stuff they need, you know, just normal PA stuff. But like, at the same time, like I know that they like are building me up to like where they want me, you know? So like, it is like, you know, while it is entry level and some of it, like some of the work is hard, like it is going to pay off because they do, like, it's not like a company where they just like needed someone to fill this role. Like they set off like the bat, they want someone that like has like a long-term relationship with them, you know, to hire, like not someone that's just gonna like be coming here for money. So like, you know, having like the post-production side of things on my resume, you know, obviously that alone like made it clear to them that I wasn't just like trying to find a job in the entertainment industry. Like I did want to do that. So, but yeah, so I mean, a lot of it is like, you know, I'm at the entry level position right now, but it is like just building up to be, you know, where I eventually will end up. But
It all takes time.
yeah, it all takes time for sure. Yeah.
Brayton?
Well, I got lucky. I gotta be honest. I just, I guess I wasn't afraid to put everything I was working on YouTube. So that caught the ear of Robin Mazzara, and she asked me to come on as part of Lightwork Media Buffalo. I think I also was able to edit the pilot as our capstone project for Buffalo State. Markis knows what's involved in that. And even though it's a school project, that's still a 30-minute pilot that you edited beginning to end. So, you know, that I think kind of just my reputation preceded me, and it's worked pretty well so far. I haven't produced any clunkers quite yet. So,
Yeah. Luke, did we get you?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely agree that word of mouth is a big one, and making sure that you have your work out there for people to see. And eventually it turns into a snowball effect where people are recommending you or they're seeing your work and they're reposting it and sharing it. And then that leads to getting more projects. And also not only getting your work out there and networking with people, but also making sure that you personally are a good person to work with. So make sure you're easy to work with, you meet your deadlines. Also make sure you're a nice person, like you just get along with people. And that'll just eventually help you get more clients and get more work.
Got it. So one of the things that I found fascinating, and Liam, you had talked about it a bit, is the shortcuts. So do you guys have any other, like, you know, tricks or things like that you wish you knew before you kind of got into post-production? Liam, you can go first.
I mean, I was just going to say, like, a lot of it for me was like, just as like every time I'm working on something, it's like I always end up learning something new, whether it's a shortcut or something about the program that I didn't realize. So in my mind, like, while there's all this stuff, I'm like, damn it, like, why didn't I know this, like, you know, on this project, like a year or two ago, like, you know, like there's like some side of frustration, but at the same time, it's like, I mean, like I'm just kind of learning as I go. So like a lot of the post-production aspects for me are self-taught. So like, and I still have kept it that way. So like, I'm still kind of like, while I know a lot, there's so much in these programs that like, I'm still like, like learning a lot more. But I don't really like, I feel like just as I'm learning things, like I'm fine with, like, it's not necessarily me wishing I had known it. Like it can be frustrating for sure, but like, I do like how I'm just kind of like, as I'm going and like working on the next project, I'm always learning something new about whatever program I'm using. So.
Cool. Markis, anything that you wish you knew before getting into post-production?
Yeah, well, when I discovered post-production in like 10th grade, pretty much all of high school in my first freshman year, all I did was like all the game footage that I recorded and sequenced was on Sony Vegas, like Luqman had, and a crack version also. And it's an application that's kind of similar to Premiere, but for some reason afterward, when I discovered After Effects, all of my edits, whether it be for films or game like videos or whatever, were done on After Effects. Like I don't know why, I just didn't like have any like flexibility for other programs. So I would say like, it's so stupid because like Premiere is like, it has faster playback times and it doesn't need the long delayed waiting times of the RAM preview and After Effects. So I would say like just use the program that's suitable for whatever it is you're going to do. So After Effects for effects, Premiere for video, whatever. Don't try to bootleg like a process in a program that's not made for whatever it is you're trying to do. Just because like that's something that like you can easily do, like especially if you're getting to like the more specialty like type stuff. Like Houdini would be used for like VFX generation. After Effects is used for more 2D effects like that. So I would say just like push yourself to learn new programs so you don't have to like, delay yourself in learning like things later on. So yeah.
Luke?
Yeah, when you're editing, you want your projects and your workflow to go as smooth and as quickly as possible. So one thing I'd say is that make sure you have like good hardware, good like computer, good processing power. If you're doing like editing, you want to have like a good processor. If you're doing visual effects, rendering, you want to have a good GPU. Because if you have a slower computer, you'll be surprised how much time that you waste on like just waiting for stuff to load, rendering, playback. So if you can, you want to just, if you don't already have a good computer, you want to make sure that's one thing you definitely invest in first if you want to focus on post-production, because you save so much time that like will be wasted on the stuff that doesn't need to be wasted on.
Brayton?
I wish I had learned a lot sooner how important good sound quality is and your mix with the music and sound effects and just being able to hear dialogue. Because audiences are more readily able to like excuse poor visuals, but they will not excuse something that they can't hear. It completely takes them out of the experience. So if I could go back, I would definitely have kind of put a lot more emphasis on teaching myself sound design and improving bad quality audio. Because I'm finding on like they said, every project, that's kind of the thing I keep running into. I'm like, oh, I got to learn this lesson again because I have to constantly like improve the audio and have that factor into the entire edit. And that's kind of my weak point right now,
Yeah, I feel like sound is so important, but you don't always, necessarily think about it. But if you're listening to something and it sounds awful or you can't hear it, it really does just throw you off as an audience.
Absolutely.
All right. And Markis, we'll start with you first. Is there a movie that has, or, it doesn't have to be a movie, it could be a commercial, something that has like your favorite editing?
Oh yeah. So I like the movie Darling. It's like it used to be on Netflix. It was like 2016, but it has incredibly stylistic like editing choices, like strobe light transitions, premature J cuts. J cuts being when audio comes before the video in a cut. L cuts are the inverse of that. But is abrupt cutaways, all of these stylistic elements that really like lend to like the disorienting aesthetic of the film. And Yeah, so that's probably like my favorite like non-linear editing movie, but like Cloverfield for VFX, I feel like the original one that came out in like 2007, 2008 is like it's like timeless, and I think part of the reason why is because like the VFX in the movie it's not really on screen for that long whenever it's shown. And so you don't really get a chance to gauge the quality or the sampling quality or appearance of the VFX. And so I think that it'll always hold up. And yeah, it aged like the Cloverfield Monster, epic. But I mean, there's like a lot of films that have like really awesome VFX, but I think also what lent to the impressiveness was like the tracking. Since it was found footage, I think it was like really innovative because it was like the first film where VFX meets found footage, and like popularized that. And so the tracking combined with VFX, combined with just like the entire story, I like those editing. I like the editing in that for the VFX regard. So I'd say that.
Cool. Luke?
In terms of film editing, I'd say Dunkirk is my favorite, just because of the way they use. I'm a big fan of cross-cutting, and I love how like they cross-cut it between the past, present, and future. And at the end of the movie, you can eventually see how they all came together and combined to like create the story. In terms of like smaller form stuff, I love like any corridor digital video. Like there are these YouTubers who they're heavily influenced by like gaming and pop culture, and they focus a lot on visual effects, and they're sort of the ones that like when I saw them, they inspired me to get into visual effects because they weren't a big film studio, but like they were just a bunch of individuals who learned After Effects, who learned Maya, Cinema 4D, and they got together and were able to use visual effects and like tell stories in cool and interesting ways that people have never seen before.
And it doesn't have to be a movie. It could be, a music video, whatever, just something that you like. Liam?
Let's see. I guess for like more experimental end of things, Ben Wheatley's A Field in England. It's like a bunch of people in like the 1700s like abandon a war, like the war that's going on there, and they find mushrooms and they eat them, and they end up being magic mushrooms. And like the editing in it is like, it's so visual, but it's all like, none of it's like graphic effects. It's just how like he edited the movie, which I'm pretty sure he directed and edited it himself. But it's like a very, like the editing in that is like, I mean, some of the trip sequences and just like how it's all pieced together is like incredible. On the more mainstream side of things, 2001 is like my go-to movie for like everything. I think the last 30 minutes of that movie, as far as editing go, are like epic. Yeah.
Well, I point to like anything by Edgar Wright for a lot of the editing that you notice that's kind of in your face, because in a lot of his films he does some crazy like transitions and audio stuff and graphic stuff, and it's really kind of like part of the story. But I also want to highlight someone like Thelma Schoonmaker, who was the one who works with Martin Scorsese on his films most often, for editing techniques that are kind of still part of the storytelling in the way that Edgar Wright does, but it's not as in your face. It's more subtle, kind of like the way and the pace that you're watching the film at is part of how you're absorbing the story. And that really comes down to that editor-director collaborative relationship that we mentioned earlier. That's a good pairing, because I think by the time they had worked on several movies together, they could probably communicate very easily, like they know each other's styles and the way that they work together.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's big. Like just even the industry in general, people work with the same people all the time because they know how they work, they know their style. And so I'm pretty sure it's similar when you have a director, or whether that's a client editor. It's like our relationship, I know what you like, you know how you want it done, and it's just easy. So it's like I might as well just stick with the same editor, or the same post people, instead of trying to find somebody new all the time, if we like the work that we do.
Right.
All right, so we have our last question. Are there any books, documentaries? Are there any kind of resources that you guys find helpful or inspiring. And that means whether to like help with your craft, whether that's to find jobs, whatever it is. And we'll start with Luke for this one. You can go first.
Oh man, I'd say like I love watching online YouTube videos like Film Right and Corridor Digital. Film Right is more like general filmmaking as a whole, whereas Corridor Digital focuses a bit more on visual effects and post production. And it's cool because like they show you the before and afters of their videos and like the behind the scenes, and they show you how like with visual effects per se. Um, with visual effects, it's not just in post. You also have to make sure you shoot it properly, shoot it a certain way so that it's set up the best way. You shoot it a certain way so it's set up so that when you get to post, you can do it as easily and as cleanly as possible. And they just take you through the full process, which is really interesting to see. And it helps you learn like the process of editing and visual effects.
So, Markis, any cool like resources or books, documentaries, whatever it is that you find helpful?
Yeah, I would definitely second what Luqman said with Video Film Riot and Corridor Digital. I definitely use those. Video Copilot as well is really good when it comes to After Effects third-party plugin tutorials, and like you can really learn a lot of like high-end graphic stuff with that. Cinecom.net is also a really good YouTube channel. All of them are on YouTube. But if you want to learn like on a more third-tier, like specific, descriptive, in-depth level, Udemy.com and Lynda.com. I think they changed the name of it, but like those are your best friends, because I mean I wasn't comfortable using like Houdini or Cinema 4D, but after a week of taking like a course, it sounds like an advertisement now. After a week of taking one of their courses, I was really comfortable like learning the shortcuts and like how to navigate the interface and what have you. So, but yeah, a lot of the courses like the more in-depth courses, they run for like $15, $20, maybe $25. There are some obviously that have fixed dates and they operate more like a course would in college, and they also have the same cost as a course would in college, which if you have the money, then you're that like you want to concentrate that much on your craft, and go for it. But like there's a lot of really free content online, so I would just say take advantage of the internet.
Ian, you want to share any cool like resources or anything that you find helpful?
Did you say me?
Yes, Liam.
Sorry. So I think it's called In the Blink of an Eye. Lou Rera recommended to me back in the day, and it's written by Walter. Yeah, there you go.
Hey.
Written by Walter Murch, and he is a legendary editor. And what's really good about the book is like the first half of it is entirely about like the old school editing, like cutting actual film, and like how he went about like that process. And then the second half is because he's like he's been around for so long. The second half is like with the digital age of editing, and he goes into detail about like the programs he uses, and like it's like a really good book, like just like to kind of get inside, because he edited like he worked on like the God, like Apocalypse Now, like a lot of stuff like that. So like hearing like some insight into like the movies that he's worked on, it's pretty crazy. Like I think he mentioned how like I mean, Brayton, you might have like the answer to this. There's like, I think it was like the footage he got for Apocalypse Now was like, it was like a 230, I forgot how like, I think it was like 230, it was a ridiculous amount of time. Like the length of actual like film that he got was just absurd. Like I haven't read it in a while, but it's a good book. It's really cool, and it puts a lot of things into perspective that like you wouldn't like really think about, like just how he like, how he goes about explaining his process and his side of things. But,
what was the name of the book? Tell us one more time, Liam.
In the Blink of an Eye. Yeah, right. Really good book.
Brayton, is that one of your resources too?
It definitely was in college, absolutely. But I think I would also recommend that you watch your favorite films. There's a huge benefit to just analyzing the editing in what you already enjoy. because so much of editing is meant to have a subconscious effect that maybe you're not distinctly aware of. There are some like there are 1,000 video essayists all over YouTube of varying degrees of quality, but I would recommend like a Nerd Writer and an Every Frame a Painting, because once in a while they will do a video completely on just the editing styles of a particular scene. But then if you also just sit down to watch one of your favorite movies that you've seen 1,000 times, but you go into it kind of with the intention of viewing it specifically to study the editing, the pacing, why did they cut from this and then back to the, that's a huge education in and of itself, because you're learning just by watching what has already drawn you to this field in the first place.
Yeah, I think it's always, I mean, it's like you said, it's basic, but study, watch your favorite films. What are they doing that you like? Same thing if you like directing or whatever it is, it's
right.
you study the craft, and that's just another way to do it. And YouTube University, they have, you can learn so much from there, and it's free content. So there's so much you can take away from there, and other free resources as well. If you don't have the money to necessarily, pay for courses or go to college, there are, things that you can kind of take advantage of that won't cost you a lot of money. So yes. Well, thank you guys for answering all those questions. We're going to open it up now to a Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, you guys can, turn on your mic, you can ask. But yeah, you guys it's open for questions if anybody has any.
I have a question.
Okay.
This is for Liam. You said that like working as like a production assistant, you would like watch a movie and like take notes. Like what kind of notes were you taking?
So part of it is, so I'll basically, like a lot of it is like actually just transcribing it, so the producers have all the dialogue, because like a lot of the times movies aren't like, while there is a script, a lot of the actors will go off on their own tangents and whatnot. So I will keep track of dialogue, but when I'm doing that, I will usually do highlights and stuff of like just seeing how all of the trailers they make. Like there's always like everything is pretty consistent, so I have an idea at this point of like type of lines and certain dialogue that they're looking for. So my main notes are just like specific lines of dialogue, and then also like certain visual scenes that they can use for good beats, and like if there's like an action sequence, like just like giving them like time codes to like quickly help them out instead of having to actually watch the whole thing on their own and take their own notes. But yeah, so a lot of it's just a lot of it is transcribing just for dialogue purposes, but like on top of that, I will like just do highlights and notes like transcriptions and give them ideas. And then when I email everything to the producers, it's usually a very long email of like what specifically is what like is good to work with, what they shouldn't really touch on. And then when we get new cuts in, like new features, and they get cut down, I usually have to tell them like what isn't in the movie anymore that they might have been using and stuff like that, because usually a lot of the clients don't want footage to be used that isn't going to make the final cut. But yeah,
Cool.
I hope that answers it.
It does.
Any other questions?
I have a question for Luqman. You said that you got a lot of your work through Instagram, and I want to know how, like, what kind of stuff like how you use social media to like sort of boost yourself, and like what specifically like do you put like bits of like your editing on Instagram, and like how does social media sort of play into and affect your freelance work?
Yeah, what it does is it just gives people a platform to see my work. I typically post my shorter form content and the type of content that I want to get jobs for. So let's say I want to do mostly music videos, or mostly I'd post mostly music video content, or if I wanted to do mostly like films, I'd post mostly like film edits or color grading and stuff. And also, not only does it show people your work, but like it helps you reach out to people. So sometimes like people would see my work, and then like Buffalo's pretty small. They have like a small film community and a small like creative community. Everyone sort of knows each other. So it's very likely like you meet this person in real life, or they'll contact you on Instagram and you will see them at like a networking event. And eventually that will lead to them like you building a relationship with them and allowing you to find more projects. and then that also leads to them like recommending you to someone else, and sort of like a snowball effect, and it just keeps going.
No, I definitely think it's smart. I mean, that's how, and even just like, some of the stuff, like we worked together before once, but I feel like everybody goes to people's social media page sometimes, especially if it's like an editor or director, or whatever, and they look to see what kind of work they done, or people be like, oh, I know somebody. And the first thing they'll think of, like, well, let me go check out his page. Like, does he have stuff? Because it's kind of like your resume now. It's what do they have? You can kind of see what they're doing. So I definitely think social media does help in that. And a lot of things it's still very formal with email, but now a lot of people, like you said, they just send DMs. Like, they just straight to it, like they just go right and, hey, I like your stuff, can we work together? A lot of stuff happens that way now. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm wondering, you guys said that you like color code when you're editing, you color code your footage. What are you organizing it by? Like with color?
Yeah. On the project I'm working on right now, I specifically had a bunch of different interviews. So I color coded each of their clips, kind of when all of their audio was lined up, because they're all talking in the same space, but like one at a time. When it's all synced up, I want to make sure I can see, okay, red, that's hers, blue, that's his, blah, 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 blah. That's specifically when you have like a lot of audio tracks that all line up together, but you want to keep separate. And then otherwise, if I do decide that it's a narrative thing and I might want to organize it by shot type, sometimes I'll color code those if maybe it's not if it's something I can't easily define in the name of the file itself. And then other times, I don't know, just for fun, just color code, just to kind of break things up. Otherwise, you're looking at this big old list of all these files, and it can just get kind of overwhelming. Color coding for me just helps me kind of break it up and tackle it how I want to.
Yeah, I mean, I do it more in like the bin over, like I don't like the colors help depending on how I use them, like in the timeline, but a lot of it's just like for scene organization, and then like Brayton said, like shot organization too. Like a lot of like, if I need like a reference, like extreme wide shot or something like that, I always have like my, like my go-to shots listed out in a specific color. But yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a quick story, if that's okay.
Oh yeah.
It's related. Well, anyway, first to Liam, I think you mentioned a field in England, right? That was you?
Yeah, yeah.
That's a slept-on movie, so that's cool. I'm glad someone brought that up.
Yeah.
But anyway, in the beginning, I wish we were recording earlier, because when Brayton first started talking and everyone noticed his Film Network shirt, I was like, oh shoot, I gotta grab mine. So I ran off camera. I don't know if anyone saw, but I threw my shirt off over onto the chair, put this one on, and anyway, so I have a film.
Yeah.
But it'd be funny if the recording started on YouTube with seeing a shirt fly from off screen. But don't worry, no nudity or anything like that. I just thought that was cute. I wanted to share.
Looks better on you.
Oh my gosh. Walk
That's not
on.
true, but thank you.
Y'all are both.
Any other questions?
I actually have a question. So I mostly do music videos, and for the most part, sound is something that like I don't really have to worry about. But here and there, I'll get like interview projects or like film projects, and I just want to know like what's a good way to practice sound or just like get more acquainted with it.
I would you use Adobe, correct?
Yeah.
So do you have Audition?
Yeah.
So I like for a while I would like do all my mixing, which was done with me in Premiere. One of the things I guess I wish I had thought about back in the day. But I just like I would like when I first started, I like the first project I really did a lot of sound mixing in. I immediately just started in Audition, and like I just kind of like would mess with every single effect and like exactly like how it affects like what I'm doing. Like I just kind of got an idea of like what effects do what. And then, I mean, a lot of it, like I had like Lou Rara, like he really helped me learn how to do all the sound mixing type of stuff. But like, just audition alone is like really good, and like you can keyframe specific like like effects, which is like the main reason why I switched to it. So if you want have like an echo and you want to get more of an echo, like you can like change that as like the film's going on. And you can one of the main things too, like for interviews and whatnot, like you can export or bring from Premiere and have it all in Audition with like the video and everything. So like as you're doing, like it's all real time, and it's doing like the cuts in Premiere. But like it's like I don't know. I would just start with messing around with Audition. Like that's really what got me into it. Like I knew that I couldn't keep doing what I was trying to do in Premiere, and then I just tried to experiment because you can get audio from anywhere. Whether it's just like ambient sounds that you're trying to see what effects do, or just actual like narration or like even music. But yeah, that's what I'd recommend.
Yeah,
Yeah, to Liam's point, like I know you said music videos, Luqman, but it's really good. Like the audition Premiere workflow is just really removing noise and even like taking out certain frequencies that you don't want, like painting them out. Lou was really good at teaching us that in 401 at least. I don't know if he taught you that, Liam, but he you can paint out certain frequencies and like you can really like get really specific with your audio edit. So definitely, yeah, to second his point, audition.
Yeah, but a lot of it is just like messing around because there's so much in the program, and like once you have an idea of like certain effects and stuff, like it really can go a long way. But yeah, Audition's a really good program for sound mixes.
One. So, well, I just want to say thank you all so much to our speakers, to the guests that came in. Thank you guys for sharing all the information that and just talking a little bit about post-production and talking about what you guys do. I'm sure the people on here and the people who will watch this later will appreciate it. I learn something new every time, I sit and listen to you guys, especially with post-production. It's so much that we don't know. And it's so much that we can't even talk about, but we appreciate it and thank you guys. Also, Hannah is going to drop down in the chat. Obviously, again, thanks to Hannah and the Film Neighbor Network, this is all free and everybody is doing this because they want to get the information out there. But they asked of you if you can. There is a charity that Hannah's going to drop in the chat if you want to donate. Also, she's going to put in the website. They have merch. And Brayton and Kyle have it on if you guys want to show it again. They have t-shirts. There's also mugs. There's different things if you go check out their website that you can purchase. And the proceeds just help keep this going. And also they do donate some of that money to charity. So it is helpful and they will appreciate it so much. So again, check out that charity. Donate if you can. Check out their website for sure. Cop some of their merch. They would really appreciate it. And just to show some appreciation for them putting all of this together. Look, buttons.
Buttons.
They got it. Whatever you need, they got it. All right. So, but thank you guys so much. Hannah, Film Neighbor Network, Brayton, Liam, Luqman, Markis. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to add one more thing. There is a great resource for people who aren't into the Buffalo film scene yet, and it's a Buffalo Niagara Film Facebook group, and there's all different facets of people in there. There's from professional things like big movies that come, people search in there for workers or anything like that, and then there's also people who do indie films who are looking for editors and all different kinds of work. So I'm going to pop that over into the chat as well, and I suggest that everyone enters that because it is a really great resource and you'll start seeing familiar names. There's a lot of people who bring smaller films to Buffalo all the time, and it's really easy to connect with them through there because they're always posting jobs.
Yeah.
So it's over there now, so I suggest you click in. I think that majority of everyone in this group is in there.
That's where you see all the stuff, like, oh, there's a big movie coming, or like Hannah said, small projects, people looking for somebody to help out with something. So you'll kind of be up to date with what's going on film-wise, media-wise in Buffalo on that Facebook page. So it's definitely a great resource for sure. And like she said, you'll see similar names and faces. And again, Luqman said it before, the Buffalo film community is pretty small. And so, and again, we're not just all in Buffalo. You know, Liam and Hannah are now out in LA. Markis is in Rochester. I'm in Atlanta. People spread out. And that even just helps you have a bigger network. So great to be on there. All right, everybody. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody enjoy the rest of your weekend.